Hello, guys, and welcome back to Gains and Growing Pains, the place where we talk about anime, gym, and life. So, if you're here to vibe with me on those topics today, come on in and take a seat because we got a lot to talk about today. I wanted to talk about the fact that sometimes when you're new to, let's say, a fitness journey or just even taking your life into your own hands and realizing that you need to start being like the main character or more of the main character into your life. I know that my journey had a point where, at the very beginning, where I noticed that I had to take more measures to make myself more of a main character slash creator of my life. And I think this kind of ties really well into the fact that when you start going to the gym or a fitness journey or anything like that, has to be like to do with going out and exposing yourself to the public in that kind of vulnerable way that like it can be when you're a new beginner at that kind of stuff, especially if you're just starting to learn like weightlifting or whatever you're into, even going to a directed class really takes like this a lot of courage to go sometimes. And especially on my journey when I had like a lot of body image issues and self-perception issues, I definitely had a lot of anxiety even just walking into a gym. Now, I knew that I wanted to do bodybuilding, but I definitely had my nerves when I would go into a gym. And this is me who had lots of gym experience before. I can't even imagine, and I don't really know what it's like, so I'm not, like I'm vouching for these people, but I don't really know what it's like to not know exactly what you're doing when you walk into a gym. That has to really suck. And I really empathize, and I want to acknowledge that in this episode today. It does add a whole nother layer of anxiety. And I already had anxiety going to the gym and exposing myself like that as a heavier girl when I was starting my journey. And I felt uncomfortable in my own skin. And I know a lot of people struggle with that. But add the layer of like not really knowing how to do exercises or not really being fully educated on like weightlifting or whatever you're into. And I can't even imagine what some people go through just to get themselves to the gym. So if you are doing that and you're actually taking those steps, even though you don't know that much and you're not that knowledgeable and you really do need help online or whatnot or a coach or something, and you're still doing that, kudos to you. I give you all the props. I'm here to clap for you because you are truly doing what this episode is about. We are talking about being the main character in your own life, being the creator, as I said, in your own life. And I think this ties really well into gym anxiety or that kind of anxiety in general. Even if you're just going out and doing more things in public, this is something, because you just want to like start your own like personal journey or whatever, self dates, whatnot. This is something that you kind of need to get over to do that. You need to start putting yourself first before others. And by saying that, I mean, you don't care what others think about you. You aren't worrying constantly about what others are thinking about you in like a store, anything. Even going to the grocery store for some people is a struggle. And I really do want to acknowledge that in this video because I am not going to sit here and tell you that, oh, it's just as easy as being an anime character to go and take charge in your own life. But I am going to sit here and give you all the motivation and try and give you all of the credit that is due when you actually do handle your anxiety and start to take those steps to do what is mentally good for you, to make yourself your own main character of your life. And I also want to bring a little bit of an anime perspective, as I usually do, to this video in a way of the main characters, or any character for that matter, actually, in anime. I'm going to bring up a few points about them that may help motivate you and give you a new perspective, hopefully, on going to the gym, getting yourself out there more in public, and just even if you want to be a content creator, posting more. I hope this helps with all that. So to roll right into it, my first point I wanted to get to is kind of like the anime's perspective of it all. If you're talking about a main character in anime, and even the side characters in anime, and I am watching, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of like Blue Lock, Haiku, things like that right now. So this really does tie into that heavily. Those ones I think are great examples of how these characters don't give a damn about what others think about them. They are there to do what is good for them and their goals, their dreams, and they don't care about what others think, right? You do have the characters that are examples of people who will have anxiety. And those are a great example too. Usually in the animes, which I love, they acknowledge their anxiety and they overcome some sort of obstacle or hurdle in the anime. And I just love that twist on it because you see the arc of someone making themselves the main character of their life, just as you may be doing on your gym journey. I use gym journey a lot in this one. I'm going to be using it a lot because that's what I could relate with. I also made myself the main character of my own life in a unique way, but I think that's a lot more unique to the person, like I said, than just a gym journey where, you know, you can kind of relate. You can kind of get it. You get what I'm saying. But I think a lot of people can agree that exposing yourself in a way like the gym is a very popular thing that people have anxiety about. It's a very popular trope that people have anxiety about for good reason, because everybody is worried about being judged. Everybody has that layer to them where they don't want to be perceived in a certain way, you know? And it takes a lot of rewiring your brain to get yourself to a point where you don't care about what people think about you. And even then, you're still going to have those anxieties. They're not going to go away. Like, I have my good days in the gym and I have my bad days in the gym. And I know that not a single person in the gym is probably giving a flying poop about what I'm doing in the gym. But it just still happens sometimes. Like, I genuinely do have those days. And, you know, everybody in my gym and everything is so nice. And even then, it's like, you know, we all have those days. And I do acknowledge that. So it's not that you totally get over it. It's not that you just can move on like nothing happened and, you know, you're scot-free. I wish. But that's not kind of how life goes. But anyways, to get back into the anime aspect of it, I think almost every character in anime has this trope where they either are, like I said, overcoming the hurdle of an anxiety or some way they think about themselves and are worried about being like perceived. Or you have the characters that are genuinely just doing their own thing. These are very motivating too because they don't give a shit about what other people are doing, you know? They genuinely don't care. They will be there to support others. It's a great example. I love anime characters like this. They're there to support others and they may be a little harsh on themselves, but it is because they're making themselves like the main character in the anime. Like, they're making themselves the main character in their own story. And even the side characters genuinely do this in most animes. Like, I genuinely love how the shows don't all revolve around one person. It adds so much depth into the show. You know, you don't just have the main protagonist that's doing their thing and then you get to know about like the villain too. You actually have layers in the shows and animes, and it's one of the reasons I really, really love anime. But to get more into the gym anxiety of it all, you're able to kind of make yourself the main character in your life when you kind of start fixing that like anxiety. Like I said, it can't totally be fixed, but when I say fixing, I'm referring to like making it more copable to go do things. When I first started my gym journey, I'm not gonna lie, I started doing it in my apartment gym and I genuinely didn't have anybody watching me. If someone came into the gym, which it happened, I kind of had to take a second and be like, okay, stressing out a little bit, keep doing your thing, you know, you're slaying, and just promote myself. Like, really get myself cheerleader. really cheerlead myself is what I meant. And that's something that I didn't really have to struggle with as much. So it's another kind of thing that I do recognize I had a little bit of help with at first, but going into a gym and actually going into a public gym again was a whole different story. I definitely had anxiety going back into a public gym where I knew people were going to be there and I knew there was chance of me getting judged or any of these fears that I made up in my mind, right? And speaking of the fears we make up in our mind, a lot of them, first of all, I want to bring this concept into it. They have not happened yet. If you think about it, if you're really nervous about your gym journey and going to the gym, being seen in public, like I said, even going to the grocery store, think about most of the things that you're thinking about and ask yourself if they have happened to you before or if they have happened to you yet. They have not. You're thinking about the future, right? You're thinking about what's going to happen in the future that hasn't happened to you yet. Now, the cool thing about this is where your attention goes, energy flows. So, the first thing that I did to kind of knock out this anxiety was I realized that in these animes, because when I started my fitness journey, I was mainly watching like My Hero, but I really started looking at these characters in the anime and seeing how they got their confidence, using them kind of as examples to show myself that I could do my own thing. You know, I could make myself the main character, no matter what insecurities I have. And I feel like a lot of people do get this from anime in general, and that's one of the things they love about it. But when I would genuinely see like Bakugou doing anything to make himself the main character of his story, I didn't really think it was as selfish. I definitely think there was like a layer of selfishness, but that's his like arc that he kind of goes through, and that makes his character even more like lovable, you know? That's weird to describe Bakugou's character as lovable. I do acknowledge that. But he definitely was one of the examples that I had to, I'm not gonna lie, at first, I was like, wow, this person's full of himself, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then I was sitting there and I eventually, as it went on, like I said, and he kind of learned some perspective, I also learned some perspective on his character. I learned that it is okay to make yourself the main character of your story. In fact, you will benefit a lot from it. And most of the time, everybody else is not focused on you. Another good example from My Hero. The class is so focused on everything that they're doing for themselves. Nobody's really sitting around judging anybody in My Hero, right? And they're all supporting each other. And if you go into the gym or whatever with that mindset, it kind of takes a little bit of that, like, stressfulness out of the environment. You know, when you walk in, it was almost like there was like this fog of stressfulness when I first started going back into a public gym. And I would have to like calm myself down and be like, okay, it's fine. And I had a lot more of those bad days that I was talking about than I do right now. But that's because I was letting, like I said, that stress kind of get to me. And when I started watching My Hero, I was kind of like, you know, everybody is on their own journey. Genuinely, everybody is doing their own thing. They're not really caring about what you're doing. And here's the thing, though. A lot of these animes also give you the example of if they are caring about what you're doing, they are probably only jealous. They're probably jealous. They're probably looking at you in some way that they were wired from like birth to look at you. It's probably not even about what you think it's about, what they're judging on you. Like literally. And just know that that person is probably going through something that you don't even know about that's causing them to judge you about, right? I talk about perspective a lot in animes too. This is another thing they kind of give you that, you know, in real life, you don't get the perspective of other people. But in animes, you can hear that inner dialogue of most of the characters. And it really does give you that perspective that kind of makes you think like, oh yeah, if this was an anime, you know, what would that person have been, why would that person have been judging me like that, you know? Maybe it's something that's going on with that. And it genuinely helps you see just different perspectives and not to take it easy on them or say that that's okay that they're doing that. but to just make it easier for yourself. Like, think of it as making it easier for yourself to be able to be like, yeah, I don't know why that person is judging me or what they're going through right now. I'm not going to sit here and judge them judging me, you know? That's a waste of my time. Genuinely, that's a waste of my time. And you know what? The main character of the animes can't waste their time like that because they're too busy getting to their own goals and their own dreams. They are way too set on that goal to waste their time on somebody like that saying something like that about them, right? So that's kind of like the attitude that I try and bring to the gym a lot. It is not egotistical. I will be the first one to sit here and tell you, do not think that that is being full of yourself. That is not being full of yourself. In fact, a lot of the people that judge other people in the gym are just full of themselves because that fake ego is different from a good, solid mental health that you know you're doing the best for yourself and you don't really care what anybody thinks about that. You know, you're pretty secure in knowing that you're doing good for yourself. Even if it's not a lot, even if you have your rough days, you are secure in the fact that you're taking care of yourself and you're minding your own business. So that shouldn't matter to them, and it shouldn't matter to you if it does matter to them. A little bit of a tongue twister there. But yeah, genuinely getting on like this rant about this because I do really, really think like, why are we judging people in the gym? You know, like, we're not going to judge people in the gym if you're like a solid person, you know? Just know that if that person is judging you, like I said, they're probably going through something. They're probably judging you for reasons that you don't even think. It may not even be about your body or how you're doing a workout or something like that. They are just in a mood or they are just like that. And just like I said in the animes, usually those are the characters that we end up finding out something like that about them, or it's just kind of that character that you're like, a lot of them are like, why are you doing that? You know, like, what is the point? So knowing too that there's a lot more percentage of people that are just nicer than the one little percentage over here that judges you. Like, we're not going to sit there and focus on that little percentage. You want to go in thinking that most of them are going to be supportive. They're going to love that you're doing something good for yourself. They're going to love that you're actually being the main character of your life because healthy people think like that. And if you really want, like, to be favored by anybody, are you going to want to be favored by those people that judge you? Or are you going to want to be favored by the healthy people that don't judge you and that genuinely know, like, well, they're not even caring really what you're doing. But if they were to talk to you, they probably would be very supportive, right? So that's kind of like what I wanted to touch on this today. But yeah, I feel like I wanted to bring that perspective into here for any new gym goers or people that struggle with anxiety, because I genuinely do know what that feels like. I did struggle with anxiety. I did a lot of work on myself to not struggle with anxiety. And even though I didn't have a lot in the gym, I will say just in life perspective, I had a lot of anxiety socially, going out and doing things alone, just thinking that like, you know, I deserve to go like eat at a restaurant alone. I don't have to be there with another person, you know? And if you really think about it, a lot of anime characters, like I said, are doing their own thing. They are going to the store alone. They're going to the thing alone. And they're so wrapped up in like the plot of the story and like the anime and of it all, like the plot, I guess. I just said that in two different ways. That they're not really concerned about what that other person over there is thinking about them. Unless you have an example like Komi Can't Communicate. That was a tongue twister. Like, I think it's Komi Can't Communicate. That one, great show, really like does anxiety very well. Relatable show. But yes, unless it's like that where they're trying to showcase a character that does struggle with anxiety. But like I said, where your attention goes, the energy flows. So we're going to focus on the ones that really, really don't care. They don't care because they're too busy wrapped up doing their own thing. And Asta from Black Clover is another great one. That is another great one on how, like, you're too busy doing your own thing. Just making yourself the main character of your own story. Actually, Black Clover is a great one, a great example of this, because for those of you who don't watch it, I won't spoil it, but in Black Clover, there are two brother-like characters, at least to me they were, and they grow up in this orphanage together or whatnot, and they both want to become the Wizard King, right? And one has an advantage over the other, but the other's still striving to become the Wizard King, and the other brother recognizes that, yes, he does have potential that people don't recognize, and he may be able to achieve his goals because of how stubborn he is and how much of a main character he treats himself like. And so this story kind of goes on. I have yet to finish it. I love the show though. It kind of goes on, and just because that brother feels like the other one who has a disadvantage might be able to make it as like a Wizard King, he does not disinclude himself from going on his own journey to become the Wizard King. So we have two kind of different stories going on here, and they're both very entangled with each other, but not one of those stories are really, they're learning from each other throughout the series, but not one of them is saying that they can't be the main character because they're focusing on the other one. That's a great example of how everybody can be the main character of their own story, and everyone can still be happy. Like, you don't have to be focusing on other people. The more attention you're focusing on other people, the more you'll also probably find yourself being someone that judges others. Now, this is just a personal belief of mine, but I feel like that I judge people more from personal experience when I was self-conscious of myself, when I didn't have that, like self-assurance. That's the word, self-assurance that I have right now. So like I said, that is kind of what I wanted to touch on today. I thought that this would be a great topic to talk about because I do love encouraging people to go to the gym, to take charge in their life mentally and physically. And I think that it's just a great example overall. Anime is very much that show. That's a good example of how to kind of like truths that we need to recognize to maybe get rid of that anxiety a little bit. Make it a little easier to get rid of that anxiety, So that's my take on it, guys. And unfortunately, that is the end of this video. I hope that this encouraged you to take a little bit more initiative in your life. And if you already are, like I said, props to you. Really give yourself that grace when you're going through hard times. If you really are taking that initiative to do that every day for yourself and be the main character of your own story, I love that for you. I am so stoked for you because that is how we have an amazing, exciting life. So like I said, I applaud you and keep going with the good work. Keep smashing your goals and staying on your goals. You can do it, and I will see you guys in the next video.